My Lords, I rise to speak briefly to Amendment 19, which Noble Lords will see already had a full complement of signatures, and I thought Noble Lord Krebs's signature was far more useful than mine, so I was pleased to leave that space. And I do think that were the Noble Lord the Minister not to agree to make some commitment like the Noble Lady Baroness Jones of Whitchurst just asked for, I think it might well be possible to find a Conservative backbencher to make a complete set at report should we get to that stage. But I would have attached my name to this, and I think it's already been very, very powerfully argued for. I just wanted to make two additional points. Both the Environment Act and the Agriculture Act were built around the idea of public money for public good. Well, here, surely the Conservative government will embrace the idea of public good for no public money at all. This is the government able to make the rules, and it can ensure that there is public good without a penny having to be spent. So that would very much be in line with the Environment Act and the Agriculture Act. I do just want to highlight a couple of the particular elements here that I think are particularly important. Element 10, supporting or improving human health and well-being. And I know that the government particularly likes to, in promoting this bill, talk a great deal about sugar beet, which of course, given the massive overconsumption of sugar in the UK diet, and the fact that actually if we only produced by volume about 2/3 of the sugar that we produce in the UK, that would be more than enough sufficient for a healthy level of diet without importing a single gram of sugar. And also the fact that sugar beet is associated with massive soil loss of fertile topsoil from some of the richest lands in the UK. If indeed you could gene edit sugar beet to be more productive and less land, it would be ideal to combine it with a combination to ensure that you're only producing a healthy amount of sugar and free up the other land for other purposes. I also note that the Noble Lord the Minister, in Element 3 here, talks about mitigating or adapting to climate change. And indeed, the Noble Lord the Minister has talked about the climate emergency quite a lot this afternoon. Of course, if we're talking about animals and things like cattle, and we talk about engineering cattle to release less methane, of course, we're looking at a whole systems approach here, and fewer cattle would be by far the easiest way to produce less methane, and also not to be consuming grains and proteins like soya from the Amazon that we could be consuming as human food instead. So it's a complex issue, but I think what we're getting at here is to deliver, as the Noble Lord Krebs said, what the Minister said is the purpose of the bill. And now the Noble Lord Winston hasn't spoken yet, and but I'm going to venture to just make one comment on the Noble Lord's Amendment 21, which is, I think it's not terribly clear from the wording, and if the Noble Lord's able to answer now or later or think about this amendment at report stage, it says that the genome should be sequenced and the changes recorded and reported to the Secretary of State. My question then would be whether that would be seen to be something that should be published and publicly available. Because I think, again, we're talking about licensing something that the government is giving companies the right and the chance to potentially make money out of. It's perfectly reasonable to demand an increase in public knowledge to make accessible those genomes that then would be available to other researchers for all kinds of possibly very different purposes, not necessarily productivity purposes or producing seed purposes, but that knowledge of all those genome sequences would indeed be a very useful thing. So I think that should be perhaps written into the amendment.